What's the worst thing that can happen on a flight? Turbulence? Bad food? How about a racist, arrogant passenger deliberately pouring scalding coffee on you? That's what happened to a 19-year-old girl just trying to get home. But the bully, a powerful CEO named Marcus Thorne, made one mistake. He didn't just assault a passenger, he assaulted the wrong passenger. He had no idea that her father was also on that plane, and her father was the CEO of the entire airline. This isn't just a story of revenge, it's a story of karma at 30,000 feet. The cabin of Ascentis Airways Flight 101 from London Heathrow to JFK was a symphony of quiet privilege. The scent of new leather, expensive perfume, and the faint, citrusy notes of complimentary champagne hung in the air. This was the world of business class, a world Chloe Sinclair technically belonged to, but never felt comfortable in. At 19, she was a stark contrast to the rows of bespoke suits and sharp, corporate-ready dresses. She was folded into her window seat, 12A, wearing noise-cancelling headphones, a paint-splotched grey hoodie, and worn black jeans. Her attention was focused entirely on the leather-bound sketchbook in her lap. The graphite of her 6B pencil whispered across the textured paper, capturing the profile of the elderly woman asleep in the row ahead. Chloe was an artist. Her father, Dominic Sinclair, was a titan. He was the CEO of Ascentis Airways. This trip was a reluctant obligation. She loved her father, but his world was one of quarterly reports, stock options, and aggressive expansion. Her world was one of charcoal, turpentine, and capturing the honesty of a moment. She was flying to New York to attend a gala honoring him. She'd rather be in a drafty London studio, but a week with her father, even a corporate week, was a rarity she couldn't refuse. The man in 12C, Marcus Thorne, had boarded like a storm front. He was in his mid-40s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from expensive marble and left in a permanent scowl. He wore a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her semester's tuition. He hadn't just sat down, he had occupied the space, slinging a briefcase onto the seat divider and barking into his phone about the unacceptable delay at the gate. "I don't care what the SEC filing says. You tell them my offer is final. I'll gut their entire C-suite by Monday," he'd snapped, loud enough for the entire front cabin to hear. Chloe had flinched, pulling her hoodie tighter. He'd glanced at her, his eyes raking over her casual clothes with undisguised contempt. He huffed, a small, sharp sound of disapproval, as if her very presence was lowering the cabin's property value. He said nothing, but his message was clear. "You don't belong here." A senior flight attendant, a woman with a calm, professional face and a name tag that read Lydia, had come by to offer pre-departure drinks. "Mr. Thorne, can I get you some champagne? Water? Just get me a scotch. Neat. And tell the captain to get this bird in the air. I have a multi-billion-dollar acquisition to close," he said, not looking up from his phone. "We'll be pushing back momentarily, sir." Lydia's smile was polished steel. She turned to Chloe. "Ms. Sinclair, lovely to have you with us again. Your usual?" Chloe gave a small, grateful smile. "Just a ginger ale, please, Lydia." "Thank you." Marcus Thorne's head snapped up. His eyes narrowed, first at Lydia, then at Chloe. He'd heard the name, heard the familiar tone. He looked at Chloe again, his gaze lingering, trying to place her. He was a man who prided himself on knowing everyone who mattered. The name Sinclair connected to Ascentis, obviously, but he looked at this girl in her sloppy clothes and dismissed the thought. A coincidence, probably some distant, unimportant relative. He grunted and turned back to his laptop, opening a spreadsheet filled with terrifyingly large numbers. The Boeing 777 lifted off, a smooth, powerful ascent that pressed Chloe back into her seat. She watched London shrink into a grey-green map below, then vanish beneath a blanket of clouds. She loved this part, the liminal space between worlds, suspended in the sky. She opened her sketchbook again. This particular book was her most important possession. It contained her entire portfolio, the work she was submitting for a coveted spot at the Rhode Island School of Design's summer intensive. The centerpiece was a portrait of her late mother, a piece she'd been working on for 6 months. Hours passed. The cabin lights dimmed. The clinking of cutlery from the dinner service faded, replaced by the steady, hypnotic drone of the engines. Chloe was lost in her work, shading the hollow of a cheekbone, trying to capture the exact, sad but proud light in her mother's eyes. Marcus Thorne, meanwhile, was fuming. The in-flight Wi-Fi was sluggish, and a key video conference with his team in Tokyo had dropped twice. He was on his 3rd scotch, and his patience, already a finite resource, was gone. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, slamming his laptop shut. He jabbed the flight attendant call button with vindictive force. Lydia appeared, her face serene. "Yes, Mr. Thorne. This Wi-Fi is a joke. How does Sinclair expect to run a premium airline with this garbage tech? I'm paying 5 figures for this seat. I do apologize, sir. We are over the mid-Atlantic, which can sometimes affect the satellite link. It should stabilize shortly." "It's unacceptable. Get me another scotch and a black coffee, extra hot. Now." "Of course, sir." Lydia returned with the drinks. She placed the coffee on his tray table, her movements precise. She glanced at Chloe, who was still drawing, oblivious, her headphones on. Lydia felt a small, protective instinct. She knew exactly who Chloe was. The manifest had her flagged as VIP Femme 1A, the highest priority. She was Dominic Sinclair's only child, and Lydia, who had been with the airline for 20 years, remembered Chloe as a little girl, coloring in the executive lounge. Lydia leaned in slightly toward Marcus. "Sir, please be careful with the coffee. We may be hitting some turbulence soon." Marcus just waved a dismissive hand. Whatever. He was a man accustomed to the world bending to his will. He didn't believe in consequences, only in leverage. And in his world, he held all of it. The turbulence Lydia had predicted never arrived. The flight was unnervingly smooth, a silent tube of metal hurtling through the dark. Chloe, lost in the delicate cross-hatching of her drawing, finally felt a human need. She'd been drinking her ginger ale and water, and she needed to use the restroom. She pulled off her headphones, the sudden return of the cabin's ambient hum making her blink. She gathered her sketchbook and pencil, carefully placing them in the seat-back pocket, not wanting to leave them unsecured. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up, turning to the aisle. Marcus Thorne had his laptop open again, along with a stack of printed legal documents. He was highlighting passages with aggressive yellow strokes. "Excuse me," Chloe said politely. Marcus didn't move. He didn't look up. His leg was stretched out, blocking her path. "Sir, excuse me, I need to get out." Marcus let out a long, theatrical sigh. He looked up, his eyes a flat, cold grey. "Can't you see I'm working? Is it really that hard to just sit still?" Chloe was taken aback. I'm sorry, I just need to use the restroom." "Of course you do." He began to slowly, grudgingly move his legs, making a show of the immense effort it was costing him. "You people are all the same. No patience, no consideration. Just me, me, me." The phrase hung in the quiet, pressurized air. "You people." Chloe froze. She felt a hot flush of anger and humiliation creep up her neck. She knew exactly what he meant. He hadn't just seen her casual clothes. He'd seen her skin. He'd seen her dark, curly hair, pulled back in a simple bun, and he'd made a judgment. "That's not." I'm just trying to get to the aisle, she said, her voice small but firm. Just go then, he snarled, gesturing impatiently. As she tried to step around him, her foot brushed his briefcase, which he had left protruding into her space. It was a tiny, accidental touch. It was all the excuse he needed. What the hell? He roared, lurching to his feet. Are you blind? You almost knocked over my laptop. I didn't. It was your bag, Chloe stammered, trying to step back. Marcus's face was purple with rage. He was a man whose every whim was catered to. And this nothing of a girl, this person, was inconveniencing him. He saw his full cup of extra hot, black coffee sitting on the divider. He saw her white hoodie. He saw her face, a mix of fear and defiance. And he acted. It wasn't a spill. It wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, hateful act of violence. You want to get by? He spat. Get by this. With a backhanded motion, he picked up the ceramic cup and flung its contents directly at her. Time slowed down. Chloe saw the dark liquid arc through the air. She tried to turn, but she was trapped between the seat and him. The coffee, still scalding, struck her in the chest, the arm, and her left hand. She screamed, a sharp cry of shock and pain. The heat was immediate, a searing, angry burn on her hand. But the worst part was the splash. The dark, oily liquid saturated her hoodie, but a significant amount. It splashed up. It hit the seat-back pocket, dousing her sketchbook. The cabin erupted. A woman in the row behind gasped. Oh my God! Lydia and another flight attendant, Ben, were there in a second. Sir! Lydia's voice was sharp, all pretense of service gone. Chloe was clutching her hand, tears of pain and humiliation welling in her eyes. My sketchbook, she whispered, her voice breaking. She pulled it out. The cover was soaked. She opened it, and her heart shattered. The coffee had bled through the pages. The portrait of her mother, the graphite and charcoal were a smeared, brown, watery mess. The paper was warped and ruined. 6 months of work, the most personal thing she owned, was destroyed. Gone. Look what you did, Marcus Thorne said, his voice dripping with venom. You clumsy. You've made a mess everywhere. Now I'm all wet. A few drops had splashed back onto his precious suit. He looked at the crying girl, at the flight attendants, at the horrified faces of the other passengers, and he felt no remorse. He felt only the supreme, righteous anger of the entitled. Lydia, he snapped, pointing a finger, get me a towel, and I want this girl moved. I paid for a peaceful flight, not to be harassed by children and have my work interrupted. I want a full incident report filed. This is unacceptable. Chloe just stood there, shaking, hot tears streaming down her face, clutching the ruined, dripping remains of her art. The physical burn on her hand was nothing compared to the cold, hollow ache in her chest. Lydia moved with a speed and authority that came from 2 decades of handling every conceivable crisis at 30,000 feet. Her mind was a steel trap of protocol. Ben, get Ms. Sinclair to the galley. Now, get the full first aid kit. Run cold water on that burn immediately. Get her a change of clothes from the first-class kit, she ordered, her voice low and rapid. She then turned to Marcus Thorne. Her face was an impenetrable mask of professionalism, but her eyes were chips of ice. Sir, you will return to your seat, and you will not move. I'll do no such thing, Marcus blustered, dabbing at his sleeve with a napkin. I am the victim here. That girl assaulted me, and... Mr. Thorne, Lydia interrupted, her voice cutting through his. I, along with at least 4 other passengers, witnessed you deliberately throw hot coffee on another person. That is assault. Sit. Down. Now. The command in her voice, backed by the sudden, focused glares of everyone around them, finally penetrated his bubble of arrogance. He huffed, but he sat, snapping his seatbelt on with a violent tug. "You'll be hearing from my lawyers. I'll have your job. I'll have this whole airline." Lydia ignored him. She cast one last, worried look toward the galley where Ben had taken Chloe, then strode purposefully to the front of the aircraft. She didn't stop at the main galley. She went all the way to the forward bulkhead, where a reinforced, coded door separated the first-class cabin from the cockpit and something else. Flight 101 was a 7-300 but it had been refit with Ascentus's flagship product, a private suite known only as the Residence. It was a 3-room apartment in the sky, with a living room, a bedroom, and a private bath, complete with a shower. It was reserved for royalty, heads of state, and one other person, Dominic Sinclair, who used it as his mobile office. Lydia keyed in a code. The door hissed open. She spoke to the flight attendant stationed there. "Is he awake?" "He's on a video call, Lydia. What's wrong? You're pale." "We have a code red, a passenger assault. The victim is Ms. Sinclair." The other attendant's eyes went wide. "Oh, God. Okay." She pressed a button on an internal phone. "Sir, I apologize for the interruption, but Ms. Marks needs to speak with you. It's an emergency." "Yes, sir." The attendant nodded to Lydia. "Go." Meanwhile, in the galley, Ben was gently running lukewarm water, not cold as per his training to avoid shock, over Chloe's reddened left hand. It's not that bad," Chloe whispered, wincing. It was the shock. It's a first, maybe a mild second-degree burn. We'll get it wrapped. "Miss Sinclair, I am so sorry. I've never seen anything like it." Chloe wasn't listening. She was staring at the soggy, ruined sketchbook that Ben had placed on the counter. "He ruined it," she whispered. "My mother's portrait. It's gone." She sank onto the small jump seat, her body trembling. The dam of adrenaline and shock broke, and she began to sob, silent, racking sobs that shook her entire frame. Ben could only stand by, handing her dry towels, his heart breaking for her. He'd seen anger, drunkenness, and entitlement, but he'd never seen such casual, directed cruelty. A few minutes later, Lydia returned to the galley with a fresh set of first-class pajamas, a soft navy blue tracksuit. "Chloe," she said softly, using her first name, "can you change into these? We need to get that wet hoodie off you." Chloe nodded numbly, taking the clothes and disappearing into the small crew restroom. When she emerged, she looked even smaller, swallowed by the tracksuit. Lydia was gently dabbing the ruined sketchbook with paper towels, trying to salvage what she could. But it was hopeless. The ink and charcoal were a permanent, muddy stain. "Lydia," Chloe whispered, her voice raw. Why was he so angry? Lydia stopped, her hands tightening on the towel. "Some people, Chloe," she said, her professional mask slipping for just a second, "are just empty. They're black holes of entitlement. They have to prove they're big by making everyone else feel small." She looked up as the galley curtain was pulled back. "He's coming!" Chloe looked confused. "Who's coming? The captain?" "No," Lydia said, straightening her uniform. "Your father." The door to the Residence opened with a near-silent hiss of pressurized air. Dominic Sinclair emerged, followed by a tall, broad man in a plain black suit who looked like he could bench press the entire beverage cart. This was Price, Dominic's head of personal security. Dominic was not in a suit. He was wearing dark trousers, a grey cashmere sweater, and looked more like a man relaxing in his penthouse than a CEO at 30,000 feet. But there was nothing relaxed about him. His face, usually calm and analytical, was set in lines of cold, controlled fury. Lydia had given him the 60-second summary. Passenger, male, assaulted Chloe, hot coffee, deliberate. He didn't rush. He walked. He moved from the tiny private lobby of the residence, through the first-class cabin, and into business class. His presence changed the air pressure in the cabin. Passengers who had been whispering went silent. People who were asleep seemed to sense the shift and stirred. He was a man who radiated an aura of absolute command, and this was his aircraft. Marcus Thorne was still stewing in his seat to 12C. He was already composing the scathing email he would send to the Ascentis board. He would demand Lydia be fired. He would demand a full refund and 1 million frequent flyer miles in compensation for the harassment he'd endured. He saw the tall, powerful man walking down the aisle, and his heart did a sudden, excited leap. He knew that man. It was Dominic Sinclair, the myth, the man who had taken a legacy airline and turned it into the most profitable, most exclusive carrier in the world. Marcus had been trying to get a meeting with him for a year. The Sterling Kai acquisition he was flying to New York for? Sinclair was a peripheral, but crucial, investor in the Sterling Group. This was perfect. This was his opportunity. Marcus immediately switched personas, his face transforming from a scowl to a mask of obsequious concern. He unbuckled his belt and half stood as Dominic approached. "Mr. Sinclair, what an unexpected pleasure," Marcus gushed, extending a hand. "Marcus Thorne, Thorne Capital. I'm not sure if you remember. We met at the Davos luncheon." Dominic Sinclair walked past him as if he were a piece of furniture. He didn't slow down. He didn't break stride. His eyes were locked on the galley at the end of the cabin. Marcus's hand was left hanging in the air. His smile froze, then curdled. The public snub was more shocking than a physical blow. At that exact moment, Chloe stepped out of the galley, her face pale, her eyes red and puffy. She was holding the damp, ruined sketchbook to her chest like a shield. Dominic stopped. The cold fury on his face melted, replaced instantly by a wave of pure, paternal concern. He strode the last few feet and put his hands on her shoulders. "Chloe, my God, are you all right? Lydia said you were burned. Let me see." Chloe looked up, and the sight of her father, her powerful, unshakable father, finally broke her. "Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. He ruined it. He ruined Mum's picture." She didn't mean to. She tried to hold it in, but she collapsed against his chest, the sketchbook crushed between them, and she cried. Dominic wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight, his hand stroking the back of her head. He closed his eyes for a single second, a fleeting look of agony passing over his face. He felt the dampness of her hoodie. No, the airline tracksuit she was wearing. He felt her shaking. He kissed the top of her head. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. I'm here. We'll fix it. I promise we'll fix it." The entire cabin was dead silent. You could hear the faint tick of a cooling engine. Marcus Thorne watched this scene, his brain refusing to process the data. "Chloe, Sinclair, Dad. Dad?" His mind raced back, Lydia's familiar tone. "Ms. Sinclair," the girl in the hoodie, the CEO. "Chloe, Sinclair, Dominic, Sinclair." He felt the blood drain from his face. It was as if he'd been flung from the aircraft into the 70-degree air outside. He was cold. He was numb. "Oh," he whispered to himself. "Oh no." Dominic Sinclair held his daughter for another 10 seconds, comforting her. Then his face hardened. He gently steered Chloe behind him, shielding her with his body. Price, his security, moved to stand beside them, a silent, immovable mountain. Dominic Sinclair turned around, his gaze slowly falling on 12C. He looked at Marcus Thorne, And for the first time, he spoke to him. His voice wasn't a shout. It was worse. It was a quiet, precise, and utterly terrifying statement. "You," he said, "have made the single worst mistake of your professional life." Marcus Thorne's blood had turned to ice water. The bravado, the arrogance, the self-righteous fury, it all evaporated, leaving behind a cold, clammy fear. He was a shark, but he had just bitten the side of a nuclear submarine. He shot to his feet, his hands raised in a gesture of frantic surrender. "Dominic, Mr. Sinclair, wait, please. It was a complete accident, a misunderstanding. The turbulence. Your flight attendant even warned us." Dominic took one step closer. Price shadowed him. "There was no turbulence, Mr. Thorne. I've already spoken to the captain. The flight has been smooth for 3 hours. Then she startled me. She was clumsy. She tripped. She knocked my arm. I was working. It was stressful. I didn't mean... I had no idea she was your... I wouldn't have..." Marcus was digging his own grave, and he knew it. But he couldn't stop. "You wouldn't have what?" Dominic's voice was silk-wrapped steel. "You wouldn't have assaulted her if you knew she was my daughter. You only assault women you think are... What was the term you used? You people?" Marcus's face went white. That's not what I... "Mrs. Albright," Dominic said, his gaze shifting to the woman in 11D, who had been watching the entire exchange, her arms crossed. The older woman, dressed in a sharp St. John knit suit, nodded. His exact words, Mr. Sinclair. "You people are all the same. No patience." And then, when she tried to get by, he said, "Get by this," and he threw his coffee at her. Deliberately. It was disgusting. I was going to report him myself upon landing. I'm a frequent flyer, diamond level, and I have never seen such thuggery. Dominic nodded, his gaze snapping back to Marcus. "So, a witness?" "Lydia," he called back to the galley. Lydia stepped forward. "Sir? What did you see?" "I saw Mr. Thorne berate Ms. Sinclair. I saw him deliberately backhand a full cup of hot coffee onto her person and her property. I saw him laugh and blame her for it afterward. I am filing a full incident report for the Port Authority, and I've already requested they meet the flight." "Thank you, Lydia. That's excellent work." Dominic turned back to Marcus, who was visibly trembling now. The realization of his predicament was settling on him like a shroud. "So, Marcus Thorne, of Thorne Capital," Dominic said, the quiet in his voice more menacing than any shout. "Let's review. You racially profiled another passenger. You verbally harassed her. You then committed assault and battery with a hot liquid, causing physical burns. You destroyed her personal property. And you did this on my airline? To my daughter." "Please," Marcus whispered. He was a man who commanded boardrooms, who crushed competitors. He was now reduced to a begging child. "Please, Dominic. I'll pay. I'll pay for the sketchbook. I'll buy her a new one. I'll pay for her dry cleaning. Whatever it takes. I'm deeply, deeply sorry." "Sorry," Dominic repeated, as if testing the word. "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry she's my daughter, and not just some girl you thought you could bully and get away with it." He leaned in, his voice dropping so low only Marcus could hear him. "You put your hands on my daughter. Whatever it takes doesn't even begin to cover what's about to happen to you." Marcus felt his knees weaken. He sank back into his seat. Dominic stepped back and addressed his security. "Price, Mr. Thorne is a clear and present danger to the passengers and crew. He will be confined to his seat for the remainder of this flight. His Wi-Fi access is terminated. His devices are to be powered off. Now, he is not to be served any more food or drink. If he speaks to anyone other than you or attempts to leave his seat, you are authorized to use restraints." Price nodded, unhooking a set of high-tensile zip cuffs from his belt and placing them on the seat divider next to Marcus. The message was unmistakable. Marcus looked at the cuffs, then at Dominic, his eyes wide with panic. "You can't do this!" he shrieked, his composure finally shattering. "I have a meeting! As soon as we land! It's the Sterling Kai acquisition! It's the biggest deal of my life! It's worth billions! I have to be there!" A slow, cold smile spread across Dominic Sinclair's face. It was a terrifying sight. "Ah, yes. The Sterling Kai deal," he said, his voice full of mock realization. "The 9 a.m. meeting at the Sterling Group headquarters in the financial district. I know it well." Marcus's panic was momentarily replaced by confusion. You do?" "Of course." Dominic straightened his sweater. "I'm a primary investor in the Sterling Group. I sit on their advisory board. I'll be at that meeting." He paused, letting the words land with the force of a tectonic plate shifting. "But you, Marcus, you won't." The remaining 3 hours of the flight were a masterclass in psychological torture. Marcus Thorne sat in his seat, a prisoner in a $10,000 chair. Price stood in the aisle beside him, silent and immobile, his sheer presence a warning. Marcus couldn't sleep. He couldn't work. He couldn't even call his lawyers. He just sat, marinating in a cold sweat of pure, unadulterated panic, replaying the moment over and over. The hot coffee, the girl's cry, the face of Dominic Sinclair. Every time a flight attendant walked by, they wouldn't even meet his gaze. He was a non-person. The other passengers in business class openly stared at him, whispering, their expressions a mix of contempt and satisfaction. He had gone from a master of the universe to a pariah. Dominic, meanwhile, had escorted Chloe to the residence. He had Lydia bring the first aid kit, and he personally, gently, applied the burn salve and a sterile dressing to his daughter's hand. He sat with her in the suite's living room, listening as she told him about the portrait, about her school application, about the casual, biting racism that had preceded the assault. He just listened, his jaw tightening with every word, but his eyes when they looked at her were soft. "I'll get a new sketchbook, Dad. It's fine," she said, trying to be strong. "It's not fine, Chloe," he said, his voice heavy. "What's not fine is that he felt he had the right. That's the part that I can't fix." "You're here," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "That's a fix." But as the plane descended, something else was happening. A young man in seat 428A, a tech influencer named Digital Dave, had been filming. He hadn't filmed the coffee throw itself, it was too fast. But he had filmed Marcus's initial racist rant. He had filmed Chloe's tears and the ruined book. And he had filmed the entire magnificent, cinematic confrontation. Dominic Sinclair's arrival, the dawning horror on Marcus's face, and the cold, precise verdict. As soon as the plane was below 10,000 feet, and the device's rule was lifted, though Wi-Fi was still off, he was editing. The moment the wheels touched the tarmac at JFK and the ding sounded for Wi-Fi reconnection, he hit upload. He posted it to X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. The title was electric. Must watch. Racist CEO, Marcus Thorne, Thorne Capital, pours coffee on black woman on Ascentis flight. Then her father, the airline CEO, Dominic Sinclair, shows up and destroys him. Karma, enter Ascentis. Marcus Thorne. The plane taxied to the gate. The seatbelt sign went off. "All passengers, please remain seated," Lydia's voice came over the PA. "We ask that all passengers remain in their seats until our security team has addressed a situation on board." The door opened. 3 Port Authority police officers boarded. "Mr. Marcus Thorne," one of them said, his voice booming. Price pointed. "Seat 12C. Sir, you need to come with us. Please grab your belongings." "This is a misunderstanding," Marcus yelled, his voice cracking. "I'm the victim. I was harassed. You can't arrest me." "Sir, we're not arresting you. We're detaining you for questioning regarding an assault complaint filed by the flight crew. Now move." As Marcus was hauled out of his seat, grabbing his briefcase, a dozen cell phones were out, all recording. He was marched down the aisle, his Tom Ford suit rumpled, his face a mask of sweaty desperation. It was the ultimate walk of shame. By the time he was in the terminal, being led to a private security office, the video was already at 500,000 views. By the time Dominic and Chloe disembarked privately from a separate exit, it was at 2 million. News vans, already at JFK for another story, were scrambling. Forbes had the story. The Wall Street Journal had the story. TMZ had the video. The internet had passed its judgment. The moment the 777's door slid open, Marcus Thorne's world, which had been teetering on a precipice for 3 hours, fell into the abyss. The 3 Port Authority police officers who boarded were not the bumbling small-town cops of his imagination. They were large, weary, and utterly unimpressed. "Mr. Marcus Thorne?" One officer, a man with a chest like a filing cabinet and a name tag reading Kowalski, bellowed. Price, Dominic's security, simply pointed. "Seat 12C. Sir, you need to come with us. Please grab your belongings." "This is an absolute outrage," Marcus began, his voice a reedy, cracking version of its usual boom. "I am the victim here. I was harassed. I was threatened by that. That girl's father. I have a—" "Sir," Kowalski interrupted, his hand resting on his utility belt. "We can do this in the seat, or we can do this on the jet bridge. But you are coming with us. The complaint has been filed. Grab your bag." The mask of authority, the one Marcus wore like a second skin, had been ripped away. He was no longer a CEO. He was just a man being told what to do by another man with a gun. The other passengers, who had been ordered to stay seated, were all filming. Every iPhone was raised, a forest of digital eyes capturing his humiliation. He fumbled for his briefcase, his face burning a shade of crimson that clashed horribly with his expensive suit. "This is—" he stammered, as the officers bracketed him, one in front, one behind. "Move!" the officer in front said. He was marched down the aisle, the walk of shame, as it would later be dubbed. He could hear the whispers, the clicks of phone cameras. As he stepped onto the jet bridge, a woman in first class, who he'd imperiously cut off during boarding, just looked at him and said, "Bless your heart." It was the most devastating, southern-fried go-to-hell he'd ever heard. The terminal was, impossibly, worse. The video, uploaded by Digital Dave, the second the wheels touched, had already been picked up by local news affiliates. A small, ragged group of paparazzi and news crews, tipped off by the passenger manifest and the police scanner chatter, was waiting at the gate. Flashes exploded in his face. "Mr. Thorne, is it true you attacked a minor?" "Marcus, accusations of racism? Any comment? Is that coffee on your suit, Mr. Thorne?" He flinched, trying to hide his face with his briefcase as the officers shoved him through the scrum. He was a man who lived for the Wall Street Journal profile, for the Forbes cover. This was not the press he courted. This was a feeding frenzy, and he was the chum. He was led not to a quiet lounge, but to a sterile, windowless Port Authority police office, deep within the bowels of JFK. The room smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. He was told to sit on a hard plastic chair that was bolted to the floor. They took his briefcase and his phone for processing and left him. He sat for an hour, then 2, His mind, usually a sharp, analytical tool for hostile takeovers, was a frantic swarm of bees. This is a civil matter, not criminal. It was a spill, an accident. I'll sue Sinclair for false imprisonment. I'll sue the airline for defamation. I'll have Kowalski's badge. Lydia will be fired. That girl. His rage was a familiar comfort, a fire he stoked to keep the fear at bay. But the fear was winning. The 9 a.m. meeting, the Sterling Kai deal, his entire year, his entire legacy was balanced on that meeting. The door opened. His lawyer, Alan Murdoch, rushed in, his hair askew, his tie loosened. "Marcus, my God, what did you do?" Alan wasn't his usual, unflappable self. He looked terrified. "Nothing," Marcus spat. "I did nothing. This is a shakedown by Sinclair. He's trying to sabotage the Sterling Kai deal. It's anti-competitive. It's—" "Marcus, shut up," Alan said, dropping his briefcase. "Just, for 1 second, stop talking. I'm trying to find out what they're charging you with." "Charging me?" It was spilled coffee. The door opened again, and Officer Kowalski entered, along with a woman in a detective's shield. She held a tablet. "Mr. Marcus Thorne," the detective said, her voice flat. "I've reviewed the statements from the flight crew, from Mrs. Jennifer Albright in 11D, Mr. Simon Lee in 12A. "That's not even the right seat," Marcus started. 12A was Ms. Sinclair's seat. Mr. Lee was in 14A. He's the one who filmed you. We also have this." She turned the tablet around. It was the video. His face, contorted in a mask of pure venom. His voice, clear as a bell. "You people." The backhanded swing of the cup. The girl's scream. The look of satisfaction on his face afterward. Marcus stared. That's edited. It's out of context." The detective sighed. "We have 8 corroborating statements, Mr. Thorne. You're being charged with misdemeanor assault in the 3rd degree and harassment in the 2nd degree. Due to the nature of the incident and the evidence, the DA is also considering a hate crime enhancement." "A hate crime?" Marcus's voice was a squeak. "That's what calling someone 'you people' before you physically assault them tends to generate, yes," the detective said. "Your lawyer can talk to you about the bail." Alan looked sick. "They're asking for 50,000, and—" "Marcus, they're taking your passport." "What? No, I have business. I travel. The Kai partners. I have to fly to Tokyo next week." "You're considered a flight risk, Mr. Thorne," Kowalski said, not unkindly. "You've demonstrated, let's call it poor judgment, on an aircraft. The judge isn't going to let you near another one for a while." Marcus stared, dumbfounded, as Alan began the humiliating process of paying his bail. He was a global citizen, a master of the universe, and he had just been grounded, like a rebellious child. It was 4 a.m. when he finally walked out of the precinct, his suit a wrinkled mess. The press contingent had grown. They were a wall of shouting faces and blinding lights. "Mr. Thorne, your board has called an emergency meeting. Is it true your wife is a benefactor for the NAACP? Thorne Capital is down 30% in pre-market trading, Marcus. Are you resigning?" He and Alan shoved their way into a waiting town car. The second the door was closed, Marcus ripped his phone from Alan's hand. It had been in an evidence bag, powered off. He turned it on. It was like igniting a bomb. The phone didn't just vibrate. It screamed, a solid, unending buzz of notifications as 5 hours of global outrage flooded its circuits. 742 text messages, 3,120 emails, 411 missed calls. His lock screen was a waterfall of alerts. Bloomberg, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, The Daily Mail, TMZ. Thorne in a storm. CEO's air rage assault goes viral. Marcus Thorne's billion-dollar coffee, spill. Thorne Capital, turn cap, plummets as CEO's racist rant surfaces. "Alan," he whispered, his hands shaking. "Alan, what is this? Plummets. It's bad, Marcus. The video has 75 million views. The official Ascentis statement. It's brutal. They've banned you for life, pending the results of the criminal investigation into your unprovoked and hateful assault on a fellow passenger." They can't say that." They did. And then Dominic Sinclair's personal office released a second statement. Alan read from his own phone. "As a father, I am disgusted. As a CEO, I am appalled. The safety and dignity of our passengers and our crew is paramount. This incident will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." He didn't even mention she was his daughter, Marcus. He positioned himself as the protector of all passengers. The phone rang in Marcus's hand. The screen flashed. Catherine, his wife. A wave of, not relief, but something washed over him. Catherine would fix this. She handled the PR, the galas, the soft side. "Cat," he answered, his voice desperate. "Cat, thank God. You won't believe the lies they're telling. This is a nightmare." There was a long, cold silence on the line. "No, Marcus," she finally said. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was flat, dead, devoid of any emotion. "This is a reckoning." "Catherine, what are you talking about? I'm coming home. We'll draft a statement, an apology." "You are not to come to the penthouse, Marcus. The locks have already been changed." "What? You can't." The doorman works for the building, which I own. A courier is on his way to your office as we speak. He has the divorce papers. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." "Lawyer? What lawyer?" We'll use Alan. I'm not using Alan, Marcus. I'm using Sarah Albright." The name took a second to register. Albright. The woman from seat 11D. Yes, the witness. She's my old sorority sister. We spoke while you were being detained. Turns out she's the most decorated divorce attorney in New York State. She's quite invigorated by this case. "Catherine, you can't," he shrieked. "The prenup! You get nothing!" "The prenup," she said, her voice now containing a terrifying, cold amusement, "has a morality clause, which my attorney, who, again, witnessed your little performance, seems to think you've violated in spectacular, globally televised fashion. Goodbye, Marcus. Oh, and all my donations to the minority youth funds, I'm having them all reissued. From Catherine Thorne, in honor of Chloe Sinclair." The line went dead. At 8:45 a.m., Marcus Thorne, having showered and changed into a fresh suit at a midtown hotel, walked into the headquarters of the Sterling Group. He hadn't slept. His eyes were shot with red, but his jaw was set. He was a cornered animal, and he would fight. This deal was his life. The receptionist, a young woman who had, just last week, gushed over his impeccable taste in ties, now looked at him as if he were a piece of rotting food. "Mr. Thorne, they're waiting for you," in the main boardroom. The walk down the hall was the longest of his life. Every eye was on him. He pushed open the heavy oak doors. The room was full. Robert Sterling, the company's silver-haired patriarch, sat at the head of the table. The entire executive board was present. On the massive video wall, the partners from Kai Innovations, Mr. Tanaka and Ms. Chen, were patched in from Tokyo, their faces like stone. And at the far end of the table, looking as if he'd slept a sound 12 hours, sat Dominic Sinclair. He was stirring a cup of tea. He didn't look up when Marcus entered. "Marcus," Robert Sterling began, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. "Sit. We have, of course, all been made aware of the incident." "Robert," Marcus began, his voice a desperate attempt at its usual confident baritone. "Robert, friends, Mr. Tanaka, Ms. Chen, I am here to offer my deepest, most profound apologies. What you saw was a gross misrepresentation of a moment of high stress. I was provoked, harassed. The video was edited by a blogger to make me look bad. It was out of context." Ms. Chen on the video screen unmuted her microphone. Her voice was sharp. "Out of context, Mr. Thorne. Was your use of the phrase, 'you people,' out of context? Was your physical assault of a young woman out of context?" That's not. I was referring to impatient passengers," he lied, and he knew they knew it. Mr. Tanaka spoke, his English precise. "Mr. Thorne, Kai Innovations is a family brand. Our reputation in Asia and globally is built on trust and harmony. The video of your incident is the #1 trending topic on Weibo. Our partners are asking if we are now in business with a violent American racist. This is not a tenable situation." "I'm not a racist," Marcus pleaded. "I'll make a donation, a large one, to any charity you want." Robert Sterling sighed and pushed a single folder across the polished table. "It's too late for that, Marcus. The damage is done. The Sterling Group is a legacy brand. We cannot and will not be associated with this. The board, in conjunction with our partners at Kai, has voted to terminate our relationship with Thorne Capital." "What? Robert, no. This deal. It's my life's work. It's worth billions. We can just wait for this to blow over." "It's not blowing over, Marcus," Robert said. "It's blowing up. Our stock dropped 8% at the opening bell simply from the association with you. The deal is dead. For you." Dominic Sinclair finally looked up from his tea. He placed his spoon delicately on the saucer. "Actually, Robert, that's not quite true." All eyes turned to him. Marcus felt a cold dread, a new, deeper level of hell opening beneath him. "The deal is not dead," Dominic said, his voice calm and reasonable. "The deal is excellent. The synergy between Sterling and Kai is remarkable. It's only Thorne Capital's involvement that's the problem. The 15% stake you were leveraging your entire company to acquire, it's a gap." He smiled, a thin, razor-sharp expression. "As a primary investor in Sterling, and as a gesture of, let's call it good faith, after this unfortunate incident, Ascentis Airways' logistics and investment arm will be stepping in. We'll be acquiring that 15% stake at a significant discount, of course, given the circumstances." Marcus's world tilted. You did this! You planned this!" he sputtered. "This was a setup. You used your daughter." The room went deathly silent. The air crackled. Dominic Sinclair slowly rose from his chair. He walked around the table until he was standing directly behind Marcus. He leaned down, his voice a low, terrifying whisper in Marcus's ear. "You are a pathetic, hollow little man, Marcus. You think I would ever risk a single hair on my daughter's head for money? For a deal?" He tapped the folder on the table. "You did this. You built this entire beautiful, self-destructing bomb all by yourself. You handed me the match. You told me to light it. All I'm doing is watching it burn." He straightened up, adjusting his cuffs. "Robert, ladies, gentlemen, I look forward to our new partnership. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go meet my daughter. We're going to the Met. Security?" Two large men who had been standing by the door stepped forward. "Mr. Thorne's time here is concluded," Dominic said. As Marcus sat, paralyzed, the men took his arms and lifted him, not gently, from the chair. He was, for the second time in 12 hours, escorted out of a room he had entered as a king. He didn't even go to his office. He went straight to Alan's. He was sitting there, staring at a blank wall. When Alan came in, holding a tablet, Alan looked like he had aged 10 years. "It's a rout, Marcus, a complete rout." "So I lost the deal," Marcus said, his voice numb. We'll short Sterling. We'll find a new acquisition. We'll survive." "No," Alan said. "We won't. You won't." "Marcus, the board. They've been in an emergency session since the market opened." "My board? My board? I put every single one of them in their seats. They work for me." "No, Marcus," Alan said, turning the tablet around. The ticker for Thor Cap was a solid, downward-pointing red line. It was down 64%. "They work for the shareholders, and the shareholders are in open revolt. The pension funds, the ethical investors, they're dumping the stock. Lenders are calling in your credit lines. They're all citing the same thing, your contract." "My contract?" "The morality clause, the one you insisted on, to fire that analyst in 2021 for his offensive tweets." A secure email pinged on Alan's laptop. He opened it, read it, and his face went completely slack. "It's over, Marcus." "What? What is?" "The board. It's a press release. They're sending it out in 5 minutes." Alan read from the screen. "Effective immediately, the board of directors of Thorn Capital has voted unanimously to terminate the employment of Marcus Thorn as CEO and chairman for cause, citing gross misconduct and irreparable reputational damage to the brand. The board is also initiating a clawback provision to recover his last 2 years of executive bonuses. A new interim CEO will be named by end of day." Marcus Thorn just sat there, fired from his own company. The name on the building was his, but he couldn't even get past security. A week later, Chloe stood in a quiet, sun-drenched studio in the conservation wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Dominic had pulled every string he had. On a sterile white table lay her sketchbook. Dr. Aris, the head of paper conservation, was looking at the pages with a magnifying light. "The paper is high-quality vellum," she said, her voice soft. "But coffee, especially hot coffee, is a nightmare. It's acidic, and the heat acts as a mordant, bonding the graphite and charcoal with the stain. It's not a matter of cleaning it. The original work is changed permanently." She had managed to separate the centerpiece, the portrait of her mother. The image was there, but a large, ugly, yellowish-brown cloud obscured half of her face. It was like a scar. It's ruined," Chloe whispered, a fresh wave of grief hitting her. "No," Dr. Aris said gently. "It's finished, just not by you." Dominic put his hand on her shoulder. "Chloe, we can—" "It's okay, Dad," Chloe said. Her voice was quiet, but it wasn't sad. It was different. She touched the stained page, the ugly, brown splotch. She felt the anger, the humiliation, the pain of the last week. She looked at the clean page opposite the ruined portrait. She picked up a new 6B pencil. She didn't try to draw her